everybody, welcome back to the channel. Last week, Michael and I visited Arlington National Cemetery, which really opened my eyes to how much American Civil War history there is here in Washington, D.C. I'm from North Carolina, and in my mind, this was a war that took place mostly in the South, and I have learned so much over the past week that there's quite a bit of history here in D.C. as well. So much more than I ever realized before. So in today's video, I've decided to visit 2 Civil War forts and take you along for the adventure. There are actually quite a few. There's over 60 American Civil War forts here built around Washington, D.C., which makes total sense. They were trying to protect the Capitol. And I have picked 2 that are my favorite for specific reasons. One of them is going to have a museum, and the other one has a really cool story behind it. I can't visit all 68, but I picked my 2 favorites, and that's what we're going to go see in this video. I hope you enjoy the adventure. I want to be sure I get my facts correct, so I'm going to be doing quite a bit of this video as a voiceover so that I can double check and not be speaking off the cuff, but I'm already very excited. This looks right up my jam. Maybe we should see more than 2.
During the American Civil War, Washington, D.C. was not only the Union's capital, but it was also a city under constant threat. After the fall of Fort Sumter, the Union quickly fortified the city, building a ring of defenses, eventually comprising 68 forts and 93 batteries, to defend the capital, including the 2 forts that we will visit today, Fort Ward and Fort Stevens. These 68 forts and 93 batteries formed a nearly continuous ring of fortifications around the city and has become known as the Civil War Defenses of Washington because it was the most heavily fortified city in the world at its time.
All right, so we are at Fort Stevens, and there was an actual battle here. I believe this is the only Civil War fort that has a battle, July 11th through 12th of 1864. This is where we are. Michael and I went walking in Rock Creek Park just last night with Abra. We're on here. Do you see Fort Stevens on this map? Let's see. Fort Stevens, right here. So we're just outside of it. Battleground Cemetery. During the Civil War, Washington's forts overlooked farmland. All right, let's go check it out. Civil War Defenses of Washington.
Fort Stevens was one of those 68 forts built to defend Washington, D.C. from Confederate attacks. Fort Stevens became the site of the only Civil War battle actually fought in Washington, D.C., when Confederate General Jubal Early launched a surprise raid on the city on July 11th and 12th of 1864. Union troops were able to repel the attack, but this fort is also significant because President Abraham Lincoln was present at the time of the battle and observed the fighting from the fort's ramparts, making him the only sitting U.S. president to ever be immediately present at the time of a battle. Though the battle was small, its outcome was vital to the Union because it preserved the safety of their capital and marked the last serious Confederate threat to Washington, D.C. Today, Fort Stevens is preserved as a national park site and a memorial to that pivotal defense.
This would be like where you would see out. It looks like there's I don't know if you can see, it looks like there's a trench down there. This is so cool. Yeah, this is made of concrete to represent what it would have looked like, but that's definitely not wood, that's concrete. Let's climb up this one. Oh, we're way up high now. You can see down. There's a moat or a trench. You probably can't tell. Oh, pretty flowers. I really never realized how much Civil War history took place here in Washington, D.C. I'm always thinking of Sherman's March and Charleston. We're really high up here. Let's see. Let's climb up this. What's this say? Lincoln under fire at Fort Stevens, July 12th, 1864. Erected by the Associated Survivors, 6th Army Corps, Washington, D.C., July 12th, 1920. We got some cannons. What a vantage point. We are up high. Can you see the moat? Or I keep calling it a moat. It's not a moat. You know what I mean, a trench. Wow. Wow. Let's go see what the sign says. Fort Stevens. We haven't taken Washington, but we scared Abraham Lincoln like hell. You look at the picture, I'll tell you what the sign says. Built between 1861 and 1863, this structure was originally called Fort Massachusetts and guarded the northern defenses of the nation's capital during the American Civil War. On July 11th through 12th, 1864, Fort Stevens defended the city from a Confederate attack under the command of General Jubal Anderson Early. During the battle, President Abraham Lincoln came under direct fire from Confederate sharpshooters while he witnessed the battle from the parapet of the fort. The Battle of Fort Stevens marks the only time in American history that a seated president came under direct fire from an enemy combatant during a time of war. And they destroyed the home of this woman to build Fort Stevens. Here's a QR code if you want to read more. And then this is the 3rd Massachusetts Heavy Artillery at Fort Stevens, 1865. The Civil War is so fascinating when you consider that it was documented. Look, there used to be a tree. Can you see? This is where we are. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 platforms. It looks like there might be one here, and you would just see the edge of it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 platforms. We'll go see what's in that next. But this is what's so cool about the American Civil War, is how much it's documented. And this is an illustration of Abe Lincoln on the parapet of Fort Stevens. Fire burning in the background, overlooking farmland. Fort Stevens was named after General Isaac Ingalls Stevens. General Stevens was killed on September 2nd, 1862 during the Battle of Chantilly. And this would have been not even a full year before Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. All right, I'm gonna get a photo for a thumbnail, and then we will go see what that says. All right, moving on. What have we got here? Oh, it's a map. Okay, dedicated September 1936 in memory of the Grand Army of the Republic, which I understand was formed after the American Civil War, so that Army veterans could kind of get together and reminisce about their wartime experiences, by the Daughters of Union Veterans of the Civil War, 1861 to 65. And here's a scale model. All right, so where are we? This must be, okay, so there were 2 cannons that way, facing off to the right, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 5 that I counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. See? 2 off this way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the one that I climbed up when we first got here, and then this, I think they call this a parapet, maybe? But unfortunately, it looks like this, if I'm reading this right, this might be the part that is no longer with us. I don't know what that is, apartments or something. Anyway, I don't know if this managed to survive, but that's cool. All right, let's go see. What do you think is in here? I'm sure this is locked, right? I'm not gonna be able to get in there. I think, oh yeah, I can't open that. It's nailed shut. I think this is where they kept armory supplies, right? Is that correct? And then Abraham Lincoln in that drawing would have been up there, I think. Let's see what his view was. I can get up there. Oh, this is steep. Oh my. Wow. We are so high. Look. There's a nice lady, a crossing guard down there. She pointed out another historical marker I would have missed. We'll go check that out before we leave. We are so high up. But you sure can get a good look now. This is so cool. More beautiful flowers alert. Oh, look at this cluster over here. So many of them. That is such a gorgeous color. This was very steep coming up. I'm gonna choose my path down wisely. Oh, made it. In the drawing, there was a tree near the edge of the fort, but it's long gone. We have this beautiful tree though. Majestic, that is a gorgeous tree. And then this nice lady down here told me there's another historical marker on the other side of the road. She could tell I was here to appreciate history. So let's go see what that says. Beautiful church. And she tells me that this sign is about Aunt Betty. Okay. Elizabeth Proctor Thomas was a free black woman whose image appears on Brightwood Heritage Trail. That's the particular trail we're close to. She once owned 11 acres in this area. She was respectfully known as Aunt Betty. She and her husband Thomas farmed and kept cows here. And then the Civil War began in 1861, and her hilltop attracted Union soldiers defending Washington. As Thomas later told a reporter, one day the soldiers began taking out my furniture and tearing down our house to build Fort Stevens. Then a surprising visitor arrived. I was sitting under that sycamore tree with what furniture I still had left. I was crying, as was my 6-month-old child, when a tall, slender man in black came up to me and said, "It is hard, but you shall reap a great reward." That was President Lincoln. For years after, even though her land was returned, Thomas unsuccessfully pressed the federal government to pay for her destroyed house. Had Lincoln lived, I know the claim for my losses would have been paid, she often said. Thomas died at age 96 after a lifetime of leadership in the community and activism. I think this might be that church. Church of Nativity's original 1901 building still stands on Georgia Avenue in Peabody. After the war, Fort Stevens fell into neglect. Brightwood civic leader William Van Zant Cox decided to rescue it from being used as a trash dump. Maybe that explains what happened to that piece of the fort that's no longer there. In 1900, he personally bought a portion of the land and lobbied the War Department to restore it, but died before the government could finally purchase the site. In 1938, the Roosevelt administration Civilian Conservation Corps rebuilt the portion of earthworks that you see today. All right, that's it. That's what happened to the other part of this. Here she is. The Church of the Nativity to your left has served the Brightwood community for more than 100 years. This building replaces a series of smaller churches built near the corner of Peabody and Georgia, which are still used by the congregation. Here's Mother Teresa receiving 14 young women into her Missionaries of Charity at Church of the Nativity in 1987. Victoria Ten Eyck reigned as Nativity School's May Queen in 1987. And this is a class of 1968. And this over here was celebrated Aunt Betty. This is so fascinating. I'm so glad they honored her, since it was her land that made this fort. And it was the only battle that actually got fought here in Washington, D.C. The backside, the fort, by the way, is over there. Battleground to community, the Brightwood Heritage Trail. Aunt Betty Thomas. She's posing in 1911 with William Van Zandt Cox to her right. And Civil War veterans who funded the Lincoln Memorial Boulder, the first marker in commemorating the events at Fort Stevens. I think that's the boulder we saw, isn't it? Welcome to Brightwood, one of Washington's D.C.'s early communities and the site of the only Civil War battle to take place within the District of Columbia. Along with nearby Battleground National Cemetery, Fort Stevens is a daily reminder that the Civil War greatly affected the citizens of Washington. This crossroads community developed from the 7th Street Turnpike, settlement of free African Americans, one of whom, Elizabeth Proctor Thomas, appears on each Heritage Trail sign. Eventually, Brightwood boasted a popular racetrack, county estates, and sturdy suburban housing. Something has flown down my throat. If you want to finish reading this, pause it. I'm going to have to take a big cough. And this is the Heritage Trail. I just want to give you a little look around this neighborhood, Brightwood. It must be so amazing to live among so much history and know how significant your land and your neighborhood once were. So cool. I'm so glad she told me to come down here and check this sign. I was not planning on this side quest, but after talking to the really nice lady, the crossing guard, she told me about Battlegrounds National Cemetery, and it's only half a mile away, so we have to go check that out before we go to our next Civil War fort. Okay, again, I'm going to insert some voiceovers so that I am sure that I get this factually accurate, but I'm already so glad that we came. This is exciting. We are at the Battleground National Cemetery.
Battleground National Cemetery is one of the smallest national cemeteries in the United States, but its significance is profound. Established in July of 1864, it holds the remains of Union soldiers who died defending Washington, D.C. during the Battle of Fort Stevens. Just days after the battle, the cemetery was created a short distance away from the fighting, about half a mile away, offering a final resting place for the 41 fallen soldiers. 4 ornamental marble monuments honor different units who fought, and a small lodge built in 1871 still stands at the entrance. Among those buried here are members of the 25th New York Cavalry, and a stone inscription honors their sacrifice with the words, "On Fame's Eternal Camping Ground." The cemetery is a solemn reminder of the only Civil War battle fought in the nation's capital and the men who gave their lives to protect it.
Okay, let's start with the sign that's right here. Brightwood Heritage Trail, and there she is, Aunt Betty. Okay, so this is just, let's see, this is a funeral for E.R. Campbell, the last veteran of the Battle of Fort Stevens, who was buried here in 1936. Wow, that's what, 1860, 70 years after the American Civil War ended. The last veteran was buried here. Here's where we are on the map. Fort Stevens was here. We're here, I believe. If you see I'm wrong, let me know. Let's see what it says. An Army bugler plays taps at the 1936 funeral of E.R. Campbell, the last veteran of the battle. And this is General Montgomery Meigs, architect of the Cemetery Lodge, photographed by Matthew Brady. We have seen so much of Matthew Brady Just north of here is the Walter Reed Army Medical Center. This 1940s photograph shows the main building. A stone marks the spot on Walter Reed's campus where Confederates climbed a tree to signal sharpshooters during the attack on Fort Stevens. After the rebels were turned back as the Battle of Fort Stevens ended in 1864, scores of Union soldiers lay cold and silent. 41 of them are buried here in this tiny plot dedicated to their sacrifice. President Abraham Lincoln, who had observed the battle, spoke at the dedication. At barely 1 acre, Battleground National Cemetery is one of the nation's smallest. Memorial Day once drew hundreds to this hallowed place. The holiday was established by veterans in 1868 to honor the Civil War dead. John I. White's grandfather, Lewis Cass White, was a veteran of the Battle of Fort Stevens. John later recalled Memorial Day ceremonies here during the early 1900s that attracted veterans from both sides. A military band would play and crowds listened to patriotic speeches and poems. Students from the Brightwood School placed flowers and American flags on the graves, and artillerymen would fire a salute. Following the ceremonies, White wrote, the surviving comrades of the Grand Army of the Republic, who had traded shots with the Confederates before Fort Stevens, converged for a light lunch on his grandfather's porch and fought the battle all over again. Memorials to units that fought in the battle are located at the cemetery's entrance, where 2 6-pound smoothbore guns still stand guard. The small, round-hewn sandstone house was built for the cemetery's superintendent and his family. General Montgomery Meigs, engineer, architect of the Pension Building, now the National Building Museum, and veteran of the Battle of Fort Stevens, created this design. That must be the house. All right, let's see. Here's the cannons. There's National Cemetery. And the other. All right, we are in. So glad she recommended this to me. Look at these old rules. Visitors will not be allowed before sunrise or after sunset. No refreshments. The speed must be confined to a walk. Battleground National Cemetery. I'm going to read this silently. You read along with me. An apple orchard. So this is what it looked like. This photograph is circa 1865 to 1870, and they're all arranged in 2 circles around. That looks like the mast of a ship, doesn't it? Here's a photo from 1930, before any of the monuments were here. Here's an act from 1867. And be it further enacted that any person who shall willfully destroy, mutilate, deface, injure, or remove any monument, gravestone, or other structure, or shall willfully destroy, cut, break, injure, or remove any tree, shrub, or plant within the limits of any said national cemeteries, shall be deemed guilty of a misdemeanor, and upon conviction before any district or circuit court of the United States within any state or district where any of the said national cemeteries are situated, shall be liable to a fine of not less than $25 nor more than $100, or to imprisonment of not less than 15 nor more than 60 days, according to the nature and aggravation of the offense. And the superintendent in charge of any national cemetery is hereby authorized to arrest forthwith any person engaged in committing any misdemeanor herein prohibited, and to bring such person before any United States commissioner, judge, or any district or circuit court of the United States within any state or district where any of said cemeteries are situated for the purpose of holding said person to answer for said misdemeanor, and then and there must make complaint in due form. Whew. All right, roll call. What's this? Regimental flags. Okay, so the regimental flags of who is buried here. Battleground National Cemetery honors these men of valor by placing the names under the flags they bravely fought and died under. Okay. 25th New York Cavalry, 61st Pennsylvania Infantry, 122nd New York Infantry, 139th, 2nd, 35 Star United States flag. Wow. Let's just start over here. I'm not going to walk off the path, so we'll just look at it from here. I want to go check those monuments out. But let's see if we can read any of these first without getting off the path. This one is a Davidson. J-N-O, I think it's Jonathan Davidson, maybe? Oh no, that's J, the number, N-O. That one says G.W. Gorton, R.I., Rhode Island. Parrar, or Darrar, I'm not sure. Poem here. It says, the muffled drum's sad roll has beat the soldier's last tattoo. No more on life's parade shall meet that brave and fallen few. Here's a George Carwin. A Tenney. I'm not going to approach that monument, but it is beautiful with the columns. On fame's eternal camping ground, their silent tents are spread, and glory guards with solemn round the bivouac of the dead. I have to look up that word, bivouac. I've seen it twice now in cemeteries. Editing Julie, put it on the screen. What does bivouac mean? There used to be a majestic tree there. Rest on, embalmed and sainted dead, dear as the blood you gave. No impious footstep here shall tread the herbage of your grave. John Dolan, Massachusetts. W. Ashbaugh, Pennsylvania. I can read these much better. I think that says Matot from New York. Armbrecht. Andrew Manning from New York. J. Owen from New York. Wow. All right, let me pause to take a photo and then we'll go check out those monuments. All right. I don't think anyone's buried here, so I don't mind getting off the path. This one has a soldier erected to the memory of our comrades who gave their lives in defense of the national capital, July 11th, 1864. Erected by the state of New York in honor of the 25th New York Voluntary Cavalry. just start on this side. It says killed in battle, July 11th and 12th, 1864. Frederick Walter. Oh, it's the names. Frederick Walter, Bernhard Hurl, Sergeant George Moreau, Henry Posler. Okay, I'm going to butcher these names, but I'm sure you can read them. I don't want to butcher anyone's name. In memory of our comrades killed and wounded on this field, in battle on this field, July 11th and 12th, 1864. And here we have Virtue, Liberty, and Independence from the 98th Regiment PV. 1st Brigadier, somebody tell me what this means. PV? 1st Brigadier, 2nd Division, 6th Corps. Wounded in battle, July 11th and 12th. Wounded. And then here, killed and died of wounds. The 122nd New York Volunteers, the gallant sons of Onondaga County, New York, who fought on this field July 12, 1864, in defense of Washington and in the presence of Abraham Lincoln. Excelsior. And one more. Memorial to, oh, I don't know what this means. COK 150th ONGI, which took part in the defense of Fort Stevens July 12th. And it has Ohio. And that looks like the sun coming over a mountain with a boat. That must, would that be Colonel K 150th? Ohio. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that means. I am so glad that we came here. This one had escaped my radar, and I'm glad that we're here. Let's go see the cannons again before we leave. United States National Military Cemetery. Battleground Cemetery, established July 12, 1864. Interments known and unknown. I tried the door, it's locked. I knocked, no one came. I don't think anyone's here today, but it does look like possibly maybe like some education opportunities in here or something. But I don't think I should linger if no one's here. So let's move on. We got another Civil War fort to go see. All right, we are across the river. We're in Alexandria, Virginia, and I picked Fort Ward as our second site to visit because not only is Fort Ward a historical fort and a site, but there's a museum here too. Again, because I want to be sure I'm factually accurate, we're going to tell this story in the form of voiceovers.
Fort Ward is a remarkably well-preserved Civil War-era fort located in Alexandria, Virginia, just a few miles from the heart of Washington, D.C. It was constructed in 1861, shortly after the Union's defeat at the First Battle of Bull Run, as part of a massive effort to fortify the capital. Washington was nearly surrounded by Confederate territory, and military leaders feared an attack. To defend it, the Union built a ring of 68 enclosed forts and over 90 batteries, linked by roads and manned by tens of thousands of troops. Fort Ward was the fifth largest of these and one of the most heavily armed. The fort was named for Navy Commander James Harmon Ward, the first Union naval officer killed in the Civil War. Built from earth and timber, Fort Ward mounted more than 30 heavy guns and housed as many as 1,000 men. Though it never saw combat, its strategic location helped guard the southern approaches to the capital and served as a powerful deterrent. During the war, the surrounding area also became home to a significant African American population, many of them formerly enslaved people seeking protection behind Union lines. After the war ended in 1865, Fort Ward was decommissioned and eventually abandoned. Over time, the land was repurposed and much of the original fort fell into ruin. But in the 1960s, the city of Alexandria began a major preservation effort. Archaeologists excavated the site, and parts of the fort, like the northwest bastion, were carefully reconstructed. The area was turned into a public park and a museum. Today, Fort Ward serves not only as a preserved Civil War fortification, but also as an educational space that honors the soldiers who served here and the African American families who lived in the surrounding fort community. With walking trails, historical reenactments, and a museum that explores the military and social history of the site, Fort Ward offers visitors a unique and meaningful glimpse into the Civil War's legacy in the D.C. region.
All right, so this sign says that African Americans established the fort, a community that continued here after the Civil War for nearly a century into the civil rights era of the 1960s. The place received its name from the fort's location on and around the remnants of Fort Ward, one of the fortifications that were built as part of the defenses of Washington. In the late 19th and first half of the 20th centuries, families living at the fort and in larger seminary communities located around the Virginia Theological Seminary and Episcopal High School on Braddock, Howard, King, and Quaker Streets were connected through kinship, marriage, and work, particularly as the two Episcopal educational institutions. 4 generations sustained the fort through these associations' faith, adherence to a strict moral code, and emphasis on education. The fort community began in large part from the results of the Civil War, freedom, rights, and opportunities for enslaved African Americans. Ironically, the fort ended almost a century later as civil rights expanded. The city of Alexandria dedicated this park and museum for the Civil War centennial in 1964. People were displaced, buildings were demolished, and graves were lost before the African American presence faded from view. Yet the fort endures. The remains of its homes and school chapel, fragments of the household items, and numerous graves survive underground. The fort's descendants retain memories, images, and traditions. New generations of those who founded the fort and seminary community still live by. The Oakland Baptist Church stands on King Street as a landmark to the community's founders and members. Its cemetery is bordered by Fort Ward Park. Wow. So there's so much history here in all the years since the Civil War. I didn't expect that. Okay, let's go check this out. All right, so it looks like we have this really nice walking trail, and I believe it makes a big loop, and we'll come to the fort in the middle of the loop. But I saw this historical marker, I gotta go check this out. This says, Historical Site, Defenses of Washington, 1861 to 1865. Here stands Fort Ward, constructed in 1861 to protect the approaches to Alexandria by Little River Turnpike and Leesburg Turnpike. In 1864, the fort was enlarged to a perimeter of 818 yards with 36 gun emplacements. The fort has been preserved by the city of Alexandria. I wonder if we're in it or if this is it. Because this is reminding me of the the hills at the last fort where we just were. I don't want to miss this marker over here too. Let's go check this out. Entrance gate. Oh, it's going to tell us about that. Okay. Entrance gate. The fort entrance gate, completed in May 1865, provided the only access to the interior of the fort. Okay. The current gate is a reconstruction based on the original Corps of Engineering design. That's the original design from 1865. A ditch or dry moat surrounded the entire fort, just like at the last fort where we were. The fort's earthen walls reached a height of approximately 20 feet from the bottom of the ditch to the arch of the gate. Typical officer's hut. Here's the shape of the fort. Okay, so we're entering right here. Okay. I saw like this kind of a shape. I thought we were actually going to circle around the outside, but it looks like we are going directly into the fort. That's fantastic. Awesome. Okay, let's go. Through the reconstructed gates. Piles of cannonballs on top. An image of a fort or a castle. Fort Ward, 1865. And this was the only way to get into the fort. Should we turn right? Let's turn right. All right, so we've got this mound here. Guys, I'm just gonna keep it rolling. Come for a hike with me. Who cares how long this video ends up being? If you're bored, that's what fast forward is for. Right? It is such a nice day. I accidentally picked the nicest day of the whole week. When I made my schedule, I wrote out a list of things I wanted to film left before we leave DC, and just randomly picked from my list. And it's 75 degrees right now. I'm middle of the summer and it's 75 degrees. It feels amazing. Okay, I see interesting things over there. Let's see what this sign says. Bomb proof. 2 bomb proofs. I guess that's what that is. Each measuring 200 feet long. Nope, that's not what that is. By 12.5 feet wide, were located in the center of Fort Ward. During normal operations, the bomb proofs were used as meeting rooms, storage facilities, sometimes as a prison. In the event of attack, structures provided temporary protection for soldiers. Okay. So we entered here and we turned right. So I'm thinking there'll be one over there, and maybe that white thing, maybe that's another one. And that's what it looks like inside. The dirt's mounded up and you can go down inside and hide. All right, let's go see. Let's not miss this sign too. From fort to community. Oh wow, oh, the constructed homes here. That would be a neat place to live, right? Archaeology aerial photograph. Jackson Cemetery. Cassius McKnight property. Oh, this is just so cool. Okay, let's go. That must be the bomb proof. Let's just see what this is first. Nice grassy area. Some picnic tables over there. This is all fenced in. We'll find out why. But let's read this sign right here. Okay, this stairway leads up the west wall between the northward bastion to your left. Okay, I can see it there. And the southern bastion to the right. Fort Ward had 14 cannons emplacements along this area of the wall that created overlapping fields of fire. Infantry soldiers armed with rifle muskets stationed between the cannon emplacements made this wall of the fort a formidable object to attack. I'm speed reading through the rest of it. The 5th largest stronghold in the defenses. We just went there. Okay, so we just came up these stairs. I wonder if this was the cemetery. Yep, this was Jackson Cemetery, right here. In 1884, James F. Jackson purchased the largest parcel in the fort, a post-Civil War African-American community. He paid $300 for his 11.5 acres with the western slope of a bank of Fort Ward. James and his wife Catherine, who went by Katie, natives of Fauquier County, lived here for 40 years, making their living by farming, doing laundry, and working as a driver at the Episcopal High School. In 1926, speculators began purchasing most of the original Jackson land, which was incorporated later into the Eagle Crest development. The city of Alexandria acquired this land for the park in 1956. Few names of those buried here are known, and none of the grave markers survived. James Jackson, who died in 1923, is probably buried here, as are other family members. Separate plots could also be purchased in this burial ground. William Carpenter bought a 22 by 30 foot plot. However, it is not known whether the Carpenters are buried here. Elizabeth Henry Douglas recalls that her brothers, Arthur, 15, and Lee, age 3, and Henry, were laid to rest in 1914 and 15. Mrs. Douglas also remembers the last surviving gravestone with the name Edna Page, a young girl. Archaeological investigations identified grave locations so new markers could be placed. The disappearance of the Jackson Cemetery grave markers made our hearts sad, and we never did know what happened to them. Only 3 of James and Katie's 13 children were still living 50 years after they got married. Here we have Uncle Jim Jackson, who dug graves with Uncle Fred Rust and Uncle Simon. Mr. Jackson died in 1923. His death certificate records burial here. And this is Louise Jackson Ashby, the daughter of Kitty and James, married Samuel Ashby, who lived nearby with his parents. Frank and Julia, they worked as farm laborers. By 1898, they had bought land at the fort where they built a home and raised their family. All right, let's keep going. I did not mean for this vlog to turn out to be so long, but I'm having such a good time. If I come to a place like this, I like to try to see everything, and I naturally want to share everything. I am a speed reader. It's hard for me to read out loud. I read really fast in my head though. If there's ever anything you want to read, please pause the screen if I skipped it, because sometimes I'm reading it in my head and I'm just too fast. So please pause the screen if you want to read. I'm so glad we came here today. This is so cool. All right, let's go find out what I think they said they were called bomb proofs. Let's go find out what that is. This fort feels so much bigger than the last one we were just at. Keep off fort walls, that's what that sign says. Oh, okay. There's the doors, magazine number 3, and the one behind it says filling room. Certain they don't want you going in there, but that's cool. I would love to know what's inside. Wouldn't you love to know what's down in there? Whew, it just gives me chills to think of going in there. This one was the powder magazine. Ammunition for the fort's guns was kept in underground storage facilities called magazines and filling rooms. Shells were armed and sometimes stored in the filling room, while the magazine was used to hold black powder and crated rounds. Implements for firing the cannons could also be kept in the filling room. Duty in either the filling room or the magazine was hazardous, as the slightest spark could ignite the highly explosive black powder. Soldiers assigned to this task were required to remove all metal from their persons and to wear protective clothing on their shoes. Okay, let's go. We got stairs. Can't go in it. Wish you could go in it. Ooh, I wish you could go in it. What do you think is down there? I mean, I'm sure they've cleared it out, right? But don't you want to go in it? I wish I could. You can see some of the trench down there that I kept calling a moat. See? What did it say? Did you say we were 20 feet up, I think? Gosh, I wish I could go in there. Okay. Gosh, it's such a nice day. Man, I'm glad I'm not out here in that heat wave we just had, where every day felt like 100 degrees. This one says it's the filling room. We'll read the sign for that one in a minute. Please do not climb on the cannons or the fort wall. Let's stick on the path. Wow. This really shows you what that last fort. Why am I blanking on? Was the last fort called Fort Stevens? I have forgotten what it was called. This really shows you what it was supposed to look like. You know, this definitely looks ready to fight a battle, doesn't it? All right, I can't see. I'm not tall enough, but you can. Tell me what's down there. Probably just grass, right? Who mows this? So hilly. This is so cool. Do you want me to try it and just see what happens? Yeah, that's not gonna open. I'm not sure if that's a door or just a piece of wood made to look like a door. Wow, look how high up we are. I wonder if it's coming out on camera. I'm not even looking at the camera. I wonder if you can tell how high we are. Feels like we are way up here. All right, I'm gonna stop to get a picture. All right, the filling room. It says historic area, no parking. Northwest Bastion. Are we only at, okay, where are we? Oh, we're here. We came in here, all right, and we walked down and then we came back up. We're here. positioned for 36 guns. The entire stronghold appeared in okay, so this shows how the entire stronghold appeared in 1864. This bastion is armed with 6 reproduction weapons based on Fort Ward's original table of armament. 3 4.5-inch Broadman rifled guns, number 14, 16, and 17. 2 24-pounder smoothbore howitzers, which were 13 and 15. And 1 6-pounder James rifle. I remember that from the American History Museum when we were talking about the battles out in Kentucky. The cannons worked in concert to sweep the field towards Little River to the south and Lee's Turnpike to the north. Took 7 men plus a gunner to fire a field cannon. You can only do 2 or 3 rounds a minute. Wow. This would be what you transport a cannon on, right? Wonder why it's over here by itself. All right, I'm going this way to see where this path takes us. This fort is huge. Wow. Okay. Oh, we saw this from up on top. This is going to show you how deep the trench is, because it felt like we were so high. This exterior view of the restored Northwest Bastion illustrates the effectiveness of an earthwork fort. The fort walls were 18 to 22 feet high, 12 to 14 feet thick, and slanted at 45-degree angles. To gain access to the fort, an attacker would have to cross the field of fire, penetrate the abatis, which is the line of felled trees that surrounded the ditch, enter the ditch, and scale the walls. Okay. Wow, that would not be easy. Can you imagine? This is so steep. You have to get through the trees, get down to the bottom, all the while being fired at with guns and cannons, and then scale. That's just about as steep, all the while being fired at by cannons. Oh my gosh. Can you imagine? Warfare is just such a heinous thing. Well, it still is, but I just can't imagine how frightening that must have been under direct fire, no less. No games, picnics, or sunbathing. That's the way we came. What a nice park this is these days. I saw a sign over here for a rifle trench. I think we were just there. This rifle trench extended from the North Bastion toward Battery Garche, located beyond Leesburg Turnpike. Another rifle trench extended from the tip of the southern bastion near the fort gate. The rifle trenches prevented enemy troops from moving towards the rear of the fort. I guess they're talking about this. All right, I believe we have seen all of the fort that is still preserved, although we're definitely up on some high ground. But I don't see any more trails or historical signs. So we're gonna go back to the car and go check out museum. I will stick in an aerial view. It looks like to me only the North Bastion that we just saw still stands today. Of course, the ridges, trenches, ditches, the rifle line, those are all still here. But I was thinking we had a second, I think it's called Bastion to go see, but it looks like that's the only one. But look, I mean, they definitely manipulated the earth to create this fort, and those manipulations at least still stand. Whoop, litter. Let's get this out of here. I mean, that's definitely, don't you think that's probably a manipulation? Is this more of the rifle line? I think it is. Definitely manipulation of the natural terrain, right? To make the fort. So it's exciting that it still exists, whether the fort itself does or not. Well, I spotted another historical marker and a cemetery. So the Oakland Baptist Church. Fire destroyed it in 1937. Several residents of the fort community were founders of the Oakland Baptist Church, which is located at the intersection of King and Braddock. The congregation started worshiping in a bush arbor as Oak Hill Baptist Mission in 1888 and moved to 3408 King Street in 1893. Despite the hardships associated with the community's relocation and the development of Fort Ward into a historical park, the Oakland Baptist Church and cemetery survive and stand as symbols of the self-sufficiency, integrity, and longevity of this distinctive African American community. Here's members of the board. Here's the founder and deacon. Here's a photo after it was renovated in 1999. Here's more members. All right, so let's go see. The cemetery that I see is here. This one does have headstones. I was very bummed when we went to Arlington that my Explore here and Find a Grave, and actually ChatGPT for that matter, the service, there was none. So I couldn't look up any of the graves. So let's go find out what this is, and then I'll see if there's any stories we need to pull out. Oakland Baptist Church Cemetery. Okay. I'm going to speed read this. Pause it if you want to read. This reminds me of John McNitt Alexander. Okay. Lewis and Roy families are two of the many represented in this cemetery. Wow. Oh my gosh. Okay, my Find a Grave did not mention anybody in particular as being famous. That doesn't mean that they're not interesting, but it did give a history of this cemetery, so I'll read that to you real quick while we just pan around and look. I don't feel comfortable crossing the fence. Another historical marker. I'm going to speed read this one too. Pause with me if you want to read too. Here it is, 1962 aerial view. Here it is in 1927. It does kind of remind me of a Rosenwald. Oh, look, there it is. One of more than 5,000 Rosenwald schools. I thought it looked familiar. Douglas Wood. His name popped up somewhere else we were this month. All right, so it says the schoolhouse is long gone, but you can still tell where the schoolhouse lane used to be. What's going on here? I think we've got a, oh no, we've got a dead bird. That's too bad. I wonder how that happened. All right, so it would have been somewhere up in here. And another cemetery, guys. This is so nicely maintained. This grass has just been cut. It smells really good too, by the way. I love the smell of freshly cut grass. Oh, here they are. Clara W. Adams. Hang on, I think I need to restart my phone. Am I not in focus? I am so sorry about that. Sometimes my phone puts itself in cinematic mode. I don't ever use cinematic mode on purpose, and I apologize. I have no idea how long the camera has looked blurry. Very sorry about that. I've been looking with my eyeballs, not through the lens. Clara W. Adams, 1865 to 1952, a tender aunt and a faithful friend. And here, Robert W. Adams, 1865 to 1930, son of George Adams and Anna Howell, beloved husband of Clara Shorts Adams. And here is another historic site. It doesn't say what's here. I don't remember anything from the sign. I wonder if this is some unmarked graves. Wow. Lovely. I like cemeteries. Again, I want to apologize for cinematic mode. My phone has been doing this weird thing where when I hit video, it will start recording as a video and then slide over into cinematic mode without me even, like, I don't know how to go from video to cinematic if I even wanted to. It drives me nuts because I don't like how cinematic looks. I feel like it looks all blurry, like there's Vaseline on the lens. I know it's supposed to be flattering, but I don't like it. I am very sorry. With these sunglasses on, this shade, trying not to fall because the ground is uneven. I'm not looking at the phone. Can't guarantee the footage is any good. If that happens, I'm really sorry. All right, let's go check out this museum. Just my luck. I am here on a Tuesday. I did look it up and it said the park was open and the park hours of operation, etc. I did not realize that the museum kept different hours. This is classic me. I always forget that museums are not necessarily the same hours. I'm sorry, we can't go in the museum today. I wonder if it's more focused on the Civil War fort itself or the community that lived here after the Civil War ended. I don't know. I would have loved to go, but that's just gonna have to go in the list of things to do the next time we're in Alexandria. Okay guys, I'm sorry I have to have my air conditioner on. I am really hot now. It is 79 and this is a relief because it's been in the high 90s for weeks now. But I am pretty hot from walking around out in the sun. I've had a great time today. I was excited to come see some Civil War history, and the cemetery that we added on the battlegrounds, that was just completely unexpected. But I wasn't taking into consideration what these pieces of land have been in the 160, is my math right? 160 years since the Civil War. This one especially, so rich with history and culture and people who have lived and loved here. The good, the bad, and the ugly. I enjoy history. I enjoy going to historical sites. It makes me feel so rooted and connected to be able to say, I stood there, I was on the land where something happened. Even though this particular fort was not hugely significant in the American Civil War, it could have been had the war gone a different way. How could they have possibly known? They were fortifying the capital of our nation. And I'm loving it. I'd love to go see some more Civil War forts if we're able to while we're here in DC. Thank you so much for coming along with me on this adventure. I've had a great time and it's been my privilege to share it with you. I'll see you another day in another video, guys.